Welcome to Wander Stories, a podcast bringing you stories from destinations around the world or across the street. This is your host, Susan Lanier Graham, publisher of the award-winning online travel magazine, WanderWithWonder.com. In Wander Stories, we go behind the scenes to share some of the wow moments we discover as we travel. My husband Bill and I sometimes find the best stories as we travel across the U.S. in our fifth-wheel trailer. Other times, we might discover stories as we jet off to other locales. But no matter the source or where we go, we love bringing you Wander Stories to help inspire your own travels. So pull up a chair, grab a glass of bubbles or your favorite beverage, and enjoy this episode of Wander Stories. Welcome back to Wander Stories. Where in the world is Susan today? I'm coming to you from Mexico. Bill and I flew from Phoenix to Cabo San Lucas, where we met my sister-in-law, and she drove us about 90 minutes north to their home in Cabo Pumo. Cabo Pumo is often called the Aquarium of the World. Situated on the East Cape north of Los Cabos, it is home to the Cabo Pumo National Marine Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site with amazing sea life, the only hard coral reef in the Gulf of California, and beautiful water vistas over the Sea of Cortez. This is an ideal spot if you love to scuba dive or snorkel, or you just want to relax. I recommend getting lunch or dinner at La Palapa. Amazing shrimp tacos, the best. So we had a really relaxing time while we were there and got to spend time with family. Bill's older sister lives there, as does his older brother and his wife. We love the relaxing, laid-back vibe in Cabo Pumo. Now, this is no Cabo San Lucas. You are not going to party and have a nightlife. It's quiet, chill, one of the most tranquil places I've ever experienced. While we were there, we did take a couple of days to experience the Four Seasons Resort Los Cabos at Costa Palmas. It's about 30 minutes from Cabo Pumo, an hour north of Cabo San Lucas, also on the East Cape. This resort is a slice of paradise. I'll highlight it in an article on Wander and feature it in an upcoming episode of Wander Stories. But let's get on to today's episode of Wander Stories. If you missed last week's episode, be sure to go back and take a listen. I talk about more of my favorite small ship cruises, focusing on canal cruises on board luxury hotel barges and river cruises. But this week, I'm going to share some Wander stories about small ship ocean cruises. Now, I've taken a couple with Viking ocean cruises and Windstar. So let's start out talking about my Windstar cruise. Now, getting to take this cruise to Tahiti is one of my favorite Wander stories. Although I'll admit, I didn't think it was a great story when it was all happening. So we were set to fly out on February 15th, 2022. The month before, I had had a very mild case of COVID. I was never even really sick, little sniffles, and I had tested negative just a few days later. Fast forward to February, a month later, many places were still requiring testing in addition to vaccines. Now, I didn't need to take a test to leave the U.S. at that point, but French Polynesia required a PCR test at the airport. We could either take it in Phoenix before departure or upon our arrival in Papeete, Tahiti. So we decided we'll test in Phoenix. If by some chance there's a problem, we're still at home. So we arrive at the airport about an extra hour ahead so we could get our tests. We're all packed, we're ready to go, we're both feeling great, and my PCR test came back positive. I was distraught. This was supposed to be my dream trip to Tahiti, a place I had dreamt of visiting since I was a little girl. I was crushed. I also have to admit I was a little alarmed and maybe a little embarrassed when the medical staff at the airport clinic came out in hazmat clothing and escorted me out of the airport. So we canceled our trip, called my sister who was house sitting for me, and she came and picked us up, and we went home. I took another antigen test that afternoon, and it was negative. We all tested the next day. We were all negative. My doctor explained that PCR tests sometimes return positive results for up to 90 days, long past the point where you were contagious. And he suggested that I not take a PCR test, but use an antigen test. Well, I really didn't have a choice. Tahiti was requiring a PCR test. And in fact, PCR tests for travel were discontinued about 2 weeks after that. Well, my doctor reassured me I was fine. We weren't at risk of giving anything to my sister. But unfortunately, I had missed my trip. Now, out of an abundance of caution, I did go ahead and quarantine for 5 days, retested, still negative. So we at least booked a couple of nights at a resort in Tucson so we could get out of town. And I began working with Windstar to plan a different date to visit. Finally, 6 months later, October 2022, we had a chance to take our Windstar cruise on Starbreeze. It was absolutely a magical trip, and we enjoyed our time. We flew on Air France into Papeete, where we spent a luxurious day by the pool. Now, the flights, we left LAX at night, landed in Papeete at 6 a.m. local time. So I really recommend book a full day in addition to that overnight. It is absolutely worth it because you can get there, check in during the day, get to your room. You can use the pool and all of the restaurants and everything during the day. And you have a very relaxing evening. And then head to your ship the next day. Starbreeze is an all-suite yacht that accommodates 312 guests. On our cruise, we had about 175 people on board. It underwent a major renovation the last few years, bringing beautiful new public areas, including 2 new dining venues, a new spa, an infinity pool, and a fitness area. I really recommend the spa. It is delightful. I spent an afternoon getting a massage, and it was a beautiful, relaxing way to spend a day at sea. We had a lovely dinner one evening with the captain at Amphora Restaurant. Now, all the restaurants with Windstar are included in your cruise price, but some require advance reservations. Amphora, however, is the main dinner restaurant, and you do not have to have advance reservations. It is a beautiful fine dining restaurant, white linen tablecloths, and a decadent menu that changes each night. During the day, we enjoyed breakfast and lunch at Veranda. I usually dined outdoors on the deck, soaking up the Pacific breezes. At night, the deck transforms into Candles Restaurant, becomes this very romantic outdoor space with candlelight. Now, you do have to have reservations for candles, and I recommend booking it one evening. It's a really lovely, tasty menu, and you're sitting outside under the stars. We ordered a lovely bottle of wine and really enjoyed our dinner at Candles. My favorite restaurant on the cruise was Quadro 44 by Anthony Sasso. Quadro 44 features foods from the coastal areas of Spain. You can sample the legendary Iberico ham, savory lamb chops, and my favorite, pulpo gallego, a Galician-style octopus cooked to perfection. We enjoyed early evenings at Star Grill. There was usually music going on, some type of entertainment, and we would order drinks on the open-air deck and listen to the music as we sailed. Now, during our trip in October, we did have a couple of days of rough weather, so the captain decided to stay in port. I actually enjoyed that. We would go out in the mornings and explore the little town and then make our way back to the ship, and we would go up to the yacht club where we would play games, read, chat with other passengers, and enjoy these beautiful panoramic views of picturesque lagoons, like something right out of a picture postcard. We had several pretty amazing wander stories while on board the Windstar Starbreeze. My favorite experience was going on a photography excursion. This was an additional excursion that I signed up for, and it was so worth it. There were only 2 of us on that excursion. We met a local photographer, and she escorted the 2 of us into a 4-wheel vehicle, and we took off to explore the island of Moorea. Moorea is said to have inspired the mythical Bali High from James Michener's Tales of the South Pacific. Although it's only 10 nautical miles from Papeete, it is a world away. It has a small island feel, and as you explore, you go from rocky coasts to white sand beaches, black sand beaches, pineapple farms, and these beautiful green mountains. I really enjoyed the information that our guide provided about not only photography, but the island and its culture as well. We explored the entire island and drove up the mountain to look out over the beautiful lush vegetation and the lagoon with our ship anchored in it beyond. One magical moment for me was when we stopped at the Church of the Holy Family of Papeete, built in 1897. It's this lovely whitewashed building with 2 bell towers surrounded by beautiful gardens. As we sat in the back of the 4-wheel drive chatting, it began to pour rain. So our lovely guide spent about 30 minutes telling us stories about the island. What it was like for her to grow up on the island, how she traveled to develop her photography skills, and then how she came home to where she loves more than anywhere else to lead these tours. And we were sitting, we could hear the rain was pouncing off of the canvas cover, and listening to her stories, it was a moment I will always cherish. After the rain subsided, we headed out again, driving up a winding mountain road to an overlook where we could view Mount Tohivia, an extinct volcano that rises to almost 4,000 feet. And from there, we walked through pineapple fields where the locals raise these tiny pineapples. They aren't maybe 6 inches long. You can really only eat them while in French Polynesia because they simply do not export them. They are the sweetest little pineapples I've ever tasted. Another fun story, which attests to the great attitude of the Windstar crew, was when my husband went hiking on Bora Bora. Now, Bill had scoped out the trails leading up to the top of Mount Otamanu, another extinct volcano that sits at about 2,384 feet above sea level. The very top is steep rock, but he wanted to at least hike from the base up as far as the trail led. Packed a few items in his backpack for a snack, filled up his water bottles, and set out. The entire crew knew that Bill was hiking, and they kept checking in with me. Although he was hiking, and this was a pretty steep hike, he still had cell phone service the entire time. So he was keeping in touch with me. He would text me occasionally, send me pictures, and I could track him through the All Trails app. I'll put a link to that in today's show notes. If you like to go out and go hiking, I recommend All Trails. So Bill's hiking, and I go in to sit down for lunch. I sit down by myself. The crew rushed over asking me about Mr. Bill. Is Mr. Bill back? I told him he was fine. He's on his way back to the ship. He showed up toward the end of lunch, and as he entered the dining room, the entire staff cheered. They rushed over, bringing him water, his usual Coca-Cola, and then even offered to bring him food instead of going through the buffet line. It was such a fun experience, and it really brought home how much the staff cares about the passengers. Another small ship cruise I took was in November 2022, the 8-day iconic Western Mediterranean cruise from Rome to Barcelona with Viking Ocean Cruises. We set sail on the Viking Sky, which has a capacity of about 930 passengers. So although it was 3 times the size of Windstar, at 930 passengers, it is really tiny compared to some of the mega ships out there. As with almost all cruises, we flew into Rome a day early. We just really love having that extra day. We had arranged before we left home for a private driver to pick us up at the airport and take us to our hotel, the Sofitel Rome Villa Borghese. We arrived at the hotel about 11 in the morning, and the hotel was able to get us into our room before noon. I adore Sofitel hotels, and Sofitel Rome Villa Borghese is beautiful. It overlooks the Villa Borghese Gardens and is within walking distance of the Spanish Steps and the Trevi Fountain. We enjoyed an afternoon exploring and then returned back to the hotel for a fabulous dinner at Settimo Roman Cuisine and Terrace. This rooftop restaurant serves up astounding views and some pretty unique flavors. We started with before dinner drinks and took in those beautiful views. That night, I opted for a fish dish that was phenomenal. It was just lightly flash fried and had this delightful citrus sauce on it. It was just perfect. After a delightful and very peaceful night sleeping and a late, lazy morning, we made our way back up to the hotel's restaurant and had breakfast there. Lovely European breakfast. If you have never experienced a European breakfast, those are always the highlights of my trips. I adore European hotel breakfast. And this was a really great one with these beautiful views across Rome while we ate. Now, we had booked the same transfer company that we had brought us from the airport the day before to pick us up at the hotel and take us to the docks in Civitavecchia. I have no idea if that's actually the right way it's pronounced. Civitavecchia is about an hour north of Rome, and if you are taking a cruise that says it flies out of Rome, you're actually going to board your ship in Civitavecchia. The boarding process for Viking was quick and easy, another advantage of small ship cruising. And we were ushered to the World Cafe on Deck 7 to enjoy lunch while awaiting access to our cabin. We had barely sat down for lunch when they announced that all the rooms were ready and the bags would be delivered to your cabin. So we took our time, finished our lunch, and went to our cabin where we unpacked for our week of cruising. Now, the Viking ocean cruises have lovely cabins, and there's enough room to stretch out. But we didn't spend much time in our cabin. When we were not on shore excursions, we spent a lot of our time in the common areas of the ship. Our favorite was the 2-story Explorer's Lounge on Deck 7. These 2-story glass windows that allowed us to look out at the world as we sailed past. You can also enjoy drinks in the lounge there or order Scandinavian-inspired dishes from Mamsen's, also in the Explorer's Lounge. I enjoyed afternoon tea that was served each afternoon in Winter Garden, adjacent to the main pool. I sipped my tea, enjoyed finger sandwiches and scones with clotted cream and lemon curd, of course, and always chatted with at least one other passenger who was enjoying tea alone. One of the trip's highlights for us was dinner in the restaurant on Deck 2. I took one of the wine tasting seminars at the beginning of the cruise, and the sommelier took it as a challenge when I told him that I also write about wines. So each evening, he tried to outdo himself on the wine offerings. Dinner service began right at 6 p.m., and Bill and I would make our way to the dining room pretty close to 6 each evening. The staff lines up inside the restaurant to greet you and ushers you to your table. Now, meals are all inclusive on Viking, so we didn't need to make any arrangements ahead of time for the restaurant. The staff would always take us to one of the lovely tables by the window so we could watch our ship pulling out of port as we dined. And then one of my favorite bites was really simple. It was a prawn, beautiful, juicy, big prawn, sitting on top of a cucumber with this light vinaigrette. I liked it so much that one night I ordered 2 of those. Now, one thing to mention, beer, wine, and soft drinks are included during meals with Viking. Now, if you listened to last week's episode about the river cruises, I recommended purchasing the Silver Spirits package on the river cruise. I recommend doing that on the ocean cruise as well. Viking includes beer, wine, and soft drinks during meals, but only during meals unless you get the Silver Spirits package. Otherwise, you're paying extra. And the Silver Spirits package also includes premium wines. So this way you can stop by the lounge, have a cocktail before dinner, sip an aperitif in the living room, listening to the piano or a featured entertainer, enjoy late night sips at Torshavn while listening to live music, and you can order those premium wines during dinner. All of the restaurants on the Viking cruise are available at no additional charge. However, a couple do require advance reservations. I recommend booking the chef's table for one night. This is a really unique experience. It's a multi-course tasting menu paired with wines with the help of the sommelier. And it's very creative. They have a set course. At the beginning of your cruise, you can see which menu is offered which night, so you can pick which night you want to dine. I also recommend Manfredi's Italian restaurant. We ended up dining there twice, and it feels like a private Italian trattoria. I had the most amazing steak, and the pasta is always fresh and cooked to perfection. However, I just think that the restaurant, which is that included restaurant you don't need reservations for, it is a really spectacular dining experience. And there is nothing better than sitting by the window, enjoying your meal as you watch the lights of Monaco fade away as you pull into the Mediterranean. One of the things I most love about Viking cruises are the cultural offerings, and that the food includes regional specialties. I could go on with stories from my cruises all day long. We had such great excursions. We got to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa that I've heard about since I was a kid. That was amazing. It was an included excursion. Bill and I took one day and walked into Monaco, and you are right in the port in Monaco, and you can go and explore the casino and watch out for James Bond as you make your way around the streets. But we went and walked up to what's known as the Rock, which is where the prince lives, and we went through the aquarium there. The Monaco aquarium is really special, and the views are spectacular. Wonderful hike, or you can take the elevator up and hike back down, or vice versa. If you have any specific questions about small ship cruising, feel free to reach out, put a comment in the show notes, send me an email. I'll try and address your questions in a future episode of Wander Stories. Until next time, I hope you have amazing travels and that you discover some of your own wow moments, whether it's around the world or across the street. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wander Stories. Join us next time when we share more stories from around the world or across the street. Until then, check out wanderwithwonder.com for more of my favorite travel destinations. Be sure to check today's show notes for links to give you more information on what we talked about. We love sharing our stories with you. So subscribe to Wander Stories and never miss another episode. We'd love to hear some of your Wander stories as well, so be sure to share your feedback and drop some notes in the comments. Oh, and remember, share Wander Stories with a friend. Until next time, when we bring you more Wander Stories, I hope you discover some of your own wow moments wherever your travels may take you.